to Moses, beginning with his first recorded conversation X2. 13, 14, continuing to his final blessing on the people to 33. 1-29, and including some of his lengthy speeches to 1. 1. 5. 1. 27. 1. 29. 2. 31. 1 Notable songs. X15. 1-19. To 31. 30. 32. 43 O Textual Acute Muritra Longo, Pentecost 598-16. 9-12. It was to be celebrated on the 50th day. Pentecost means 50th day from Nisan 16, the day that the barley sheaf was offered. 23. 15, 16 in the Jewish calendar it falls on 7-6. It was after the barley harvest and the beginning of the harvest of wheat, which ripened later than the barley. X9. 31, 32. The Israelites were not allowed to begin the harvest until the first fruits of the barley had been presented to Jehovah on Nisan 16. Therefore, in Deuteronomy 16. 9, 10 the instructions are: from when the sickle is first put to the standing grain you will start to count 7 weeks. Then you must celebrate the festival of weeks to Jehovah your God. Every male was required to attend, and it is also stated in connection with this festival. You must rejoice before Jehovah your God, you and your son and your daughter and your manslave and your slave girl and Levite who is inside your gates and the alien resident and the fatherless boy and the widow, who are in your midst, in the place that Jehovah your God will choose to have his name reside there. 16. 11 The Passover was a close family observance. The festival of harvest, or Pentecost, called for a more open and hospitable liberality, in this sense resembling the festival of booths. The first fruits of the wheat harvest were to be treated differently from the barley first fruits. 2/10 of an ephah of fine wheat flour 4.4 L 4 dry quart along with leaven was to be baked into 2 loaves. They were to be out of your dwelling places, which meant that they were to be loaves like those made for the daily use of the household and not expressly for holy purposes. 23. 17 burnt offerings and a sin offering went along with this, and as a communion offering 2 male lambs. The priest waved the loaves and the lambs before Jehovah by putting his hands underneath the loaves and the pieces of the lambs and waving them back and forth, signifying that they were presented before Jehovah. After the loaves and the lambs were offered, they became the priests for him to eat as a communion offering. 23. 18-20. There is a slight difference in description of the other offerings aside from the communion offering in the account at Numbers 28. 27-30. Instead of 7 lambs, 1 young bull, 2 rams, and 1 kid of the goats, as at Leviticus 23. 18-19, it calls for 7 lambs, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 1 kid of the goats. Jewish commentators say that the passage in Leviticus refers to the sacrifice to accompany the wave loaves, and the one in Numbers to the properly appointed sacrifice of the festival, so that both were offered. Supporting this, Josephus, in describing the sacrifices on Pentecost Day, first mentions the 2 lambs of the communion offering, then combines the remaining offerings, enumerating 3 calves, 2 rams evidently a transcriber's error for 3, 14 lambs, and 2 kids. Jewish Antiquities, 3, 253x, 6 The day was a holy convention, a Sabbath day. 23. 21. New 28. 26. The festival of Pentecost came at the end of the barley harvest and was a time of rejoicing, as is indicated by the communion offering that was presented by the congregation and was given to the priest. This offering would also denote peaceful fellowship with Jehovah. At the same time the sin offering reminded the Israelites of sin on their part and was a petition to God for forgiveness and cleansing. The increased burnt offering served as a practical expression of their gratitude for his bountifulness as well as a symbol of their wholeheartedness in carrying out their covenant relationship with God. Not only was it specially appropriate for Israel to offer thanks to Jehovah on this day, but they also were not to forget their poor brothers. After giving instructions on the festival, Jehovah commanded, "And when you people reap the harvest of your land, you must not do completely the otextoi acute muritra longo, Penwell 599 The morning glow extended to Hebron Putin and to all such preparations, by giving the signal for the regular morning sacrifice. The Temple, 1874, p. 228. After the regular daily morning sacrifice was offered, the festive sacrifices described in Numbers 28. 26-30 were brought. Afterward came the offering peculiar to Pentecost. The wave loaves with their accompanying sacrifices. 23. 18-20 After the loaves were waved, one of them was taken by the high priest, and the second was divided among all the officiating priests. Symbolic significance of the festival. It was on the day of Pentecost that the Holy Spirit was poured out by Jesus Christ on the group of about 120 disciples in the upper room at Jerusalem in the year 33 CE. Act 1. 13-15 Jesus had been resurrected on Nisan 16, the day of the offering of the barley sheaf by the high priest. He was, in a figurative sense, without leaven, which represents sin. Heb 7. 26 At Pentecost, as the great high priest, he could present to his Father Jehovah additional sons, Jesus' footstep followers, who were taken from sinful mankind and who accepted his sacrifice. The approval by God of Jesus' own human sacrifice and of Jesus' presentation of his disciples, although born in sin to be spirit-begotten sons of God, was manifested by the pouring out of God's Spirit upon them. The fact that there were 2 loaves of newly ripened grain that were presented to Jehovah at Pentecost indicates that more than one person would be involved in the fulfillment. It may also point to the fact that those who become spirit-begotten followers of Jesus Christ would be taken from 2 groups on earth. First from the natural circumcised Jews, and later from all the other nations of the world, the Gentiles. Compare F2. 13-18. The Jews traditionally hold that Pentecost corresponded to the time of the giving of the law at Sinai, when Israel became a distinguished people. It was early in the 3rd month Sivan that the Israelites gathered at Sinai and received the law. Acts 19. 1 Just as Moses as mediator was used to introduce Israel into the law covenant, so Jesus Christ as mediator of spiritual Israel now brought that new nation into the new covenant. The Apostle Paul draws a comparison from these 2 events, saying that Christians are gathered to a far greater assemblage at Mount Zion and a city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem, under new covenant arrangements. Job 12. 18-24. Compare 14. 1-5. Jesus had announced the new covenant to his disciples on the evening of his last Passover and, just before his ascension, had instructed them to wait at Jerusalem for the promised Holy Spirit. Now, as the Apostle Peter explained, because he was exalted to the right hand of God and received the promised Holy Spirit from the Father, he has poured out that which you see and hear. Luke 22. 20. Act 2. 33 The presence of God's Spirit was manifested in that some 120 disciples were miraculously speaking in different tongues. By this means, the multitudes of Jews and proselytes from all parts of the Roman Empire could hear with intelligibility the magnificent things of God. Act 2. 7-11 First at this time, by means of Peter, baptism in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit was preached, as Jesus had commanded at Matthew 28. 19. Act 2. 21, 36, 38, 39 Having gone into the heavens with the value of his sacrifice, Jesus was able to bring his followers into the new covenant. Job 9. 15-26. These followers, then, with the 3,000 added that day Act 2. 41 and others later, were not the very first fruits to God, for this was Jesus Christ himself, resurrected on Nisan 16 of 33 CE 1 Co 15. 23, when the barley sheaves were waved. Rather, they were like the first fruits of the wheat, a second crop, certain first fruits to God. Ches 1. 18 They now became God's new nation, God's chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for o textoi acute miritra longo, people of the land earth 600 people of the land earth. This expression heb amhamidal dodoretz, with its plural forms occurs 75 times in the Hebrew text. In Jesus' day it was employed by the religious leaders as a term of contempt, but originally that was not the case. The Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon by Kuhler and Baumgartner explains this Hebrew expression to mean the citizens possessing the full rights. Lexicon in Veteris Testamenti Libros, Leiden, 1958, p. 711 The Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible states that the term in the strict sense includes only the responsible male citizenry, the married men who live on their own land and have full rights and duties, including the duty of serving in the army and of participating in judicial proceedings and festivals. Edited by G. A. Buttrick, 1962, Volume 1, p. 106. Compare the 20. 2-5. 2 Chi 15. 5. 16. 15. S 45. 16, 22. 46. 3, 9. Thus, originally, the expression was one of respect. It did not apply only to a lowly class or those of the poorer element. In bargaining for the property rights to the cave of Machpelah, Abraham dealt with the Hittite people of the land. GE 23. 7, 13. RS. In these verses both an American translation and the New World Translation render the Hebrew Amhar Middle Eretz as natives. Pharaoh, in speaking to Moses and Aaron, referred to the Israelites dwelling in Goshen as the people of the land. X 5. 5. The expression was used in the singular to embrace all the people of Canaan. New 14. 9, and with the plural of Middle peoples to describe them as forming separate tribes or peoples within that land. NE 9. 24, 30. It is used in a similar way to refer to the subject peoples within the Persian Empire in Queen Esther's time. As 8. 17. Sennacherib used the full plural form Soth, peoples of the lands, as applying to the many peoples or nations conquered by the Assyrian forces. 2 Ch 32. 13. Within the nation of Israel, the phrase Amhar Eretz often distinguished the general citizenry from governmental or priestly officials. 2 K 11. 14.